Hello, my name's Harry Papworth and I'm a second year student on the Foundation Degree Music Production course. In this presentation, I'll be talking about a multitude of things relating to the uni experience, talking from a broad and objective standpoint, but predominantly by talking from my own personal experiences as a student. I'll kick things off by going over the initial research and decision-making process leading up to university, as well as detailing my journey to that point. From there, I'll start talking about the academic experience through my viewpoint of my own course. Then I'll pivot into talking about the other facets of university, such as extracurricular activities and ways to get involved around campus. I'll also cover the resources and support available to you as an HE student, my experiences as a student outside of university, and what I plan on doing after my studies. My journey onto Northbrook's degree courses began at the college diploma level. I was doing my second year of an IT course elsewhere and was starting to dread the upcoming programme, but thankfully, through word of mouth of a classmate, I'd heard about Northbrook's music production courses and I decided to sign up for one. I was shocked that I was studying music, but I was even more shocked to see that I was starting to consider going to university for it. Throughout the year, I would get help from tutors with financial advice, as well as general guidance with regards to HE. I can recall two of those instances, the first being my first ever tutorial with Mike, my course leader. I'd just left an industry visit, which he ran, and I headed to a classroom to do some work for the rest of the evening. He later found me, and we ended up talking about the music I made, what I liked, and what my prospects were. Just overall trying to get to know me as a person, but also gauge what my needs and wants were as a student. I was explaining my deliberations about going to uni and my doubts about the whole situation, but he reassured me in a few ways. One of which was simply pointing out the behaviours that he'd noticed in me, which he deemed would serve me well in university. Things that I hadn't even really recognised myself. Very simple things, but those include showing up to most of the industry visits, staying back late to finish work, making use of all the equipment, and just having a generally good attendance, which you may have derived from seeing me around. I thought that those were the bare minimum, but I guess that's not even guaranteed for most people, so that gave me a boost of confidence that I was on the right track. The second example being the email exchanges about the financial side of things that I had with my head tutor at the time, Ed. Those conversations would then go on to help persuade my parents, both of which hadn't gone to university like the vast majority of my extended family. With all that in mind, I eventually applied, and being a pre-existing Northbrook student, I had a progression promise. And what that is if I were to pass my college course, I would then be guaranteed a spot on a university course at Northbrook, making the process really simple. Although I wanted to visit a few other places out of curiosity, and therefore I picked the slightly more time-consuming route of going through UCAS, attending open days, and assessing a couple more options. So based on that, my first piece of advice to you would be to talk to as many people as possible about your situation. Try and get as much perspective as you can. Discuss your doubts and fears about joining university, and just figure out whether or not you think it would be beneficial to you to join. For that, you've got a lot of people you can go to. The first group of people that I can think of, the most obvious choice, would be to talk about it to your friends and family. The friends and family will likely give you some different advice than what you might expect from everyone else that I'll go on to name, because they might not be in the higher education stratosphere. So my parents, for one, were rather sceptical about certain things, but thanks to some advice that I'd gotten from my head tutor Ed on the financial side of things, I was able to persuade them. But they did keep me grounded and kept me thinking about anything that was financial and accommodation and just general big picture stuff that I might have lost sight of when getting excited about the prospects of joining university for the sake of my friends and to explore all the gear. So they definitely keep you looking at it from different angles. Now, the next three types of people will be able to give you the most relevant information for your decision making, in my opinion, and that would be your classmates and peers. You should be able to relate to their situations much more than anyone else's, and so hearing why a certain classmate made the decision that they did should help you see things from their perspective and understand why you might do it. Your tutors, also a very good option. They'll likely have experience with university, so whether they're able to advise you in a teaching capacity, giving you an insight on what to expect from the teaching and the workload, they can also give you advice on how they think you would fare in that environment based on their experiences teaching you. Now, the best of both worlds would be the last group of people that I'd recommend talking to, and those are current students. You'll be able to get insight into what they were feeling prior to joining university, which is the position that you might be in now, and get a checkup on what their current thoughts about their situation is. So that could be regarding the teaching, the courses and the facilities, and how it's worked for them outside of university, whether it be accommodation or the financial side of things, and just general well-being. So being able to pick the brains of students who no longer have to speculate about what university is like and instead that have that first-hand experience is super informative. And that takes me to the next point, which is open days. Like I said, I was happy with where I was, but I still saw value in exploring my options, and open days was perfect for that. Whether you have no clue where your place of study will be, or if you're convinced you know where you want to go, you should be able to walk away from an open day with a bit more insight. I went to a couple myself, and it definitely helped recontextualize a few things, and it made me realise that I was warming up to the idea of student accommodation, which I'm now in. More on that later. And in fact, it helped cement my first choice, which was Northbrook, as the most suitable option for me, because I was able to compare in real time what every other university was offering and seeing it with my own eyes. Now, during my first year, a friend and I signed up to be student ambassadors, and we got to work at an open day, now seeing it from another side. We wound up taking 2 prospective students who knew a lot about music and that were clearly experienced for their own little tour of our studios, and we got to talk to them about the more specific things that they were curious about. In this case, it was the selection and availability of hardware synths and what the process of renting them out would be like. We also got to compare what kind of software and equipment we used on the daily, what we thought of our courses, and about the teaching. We later saw them on the campus at the start of the next academic year, so regardless of the situation you're in, you should be able to get something out of an open day. That being said, open days do require signing up, so if you have spotted a handful of places, make sure to book yourself in. I can't stress that enough. You're better safe than sorry. If you no longer want to go to an open day by the time you approach the date, you can always cancel. They aren't as frequent as you might like, so try to get on it as soon as possible, and for any information on those, check any of the university's websites for details. Now, it should be mentioned that due to the current circumstances, open days are currently only being held virtually, although this could change in the next year. That means missing out on the opportunity to freely walk around a campus and get a feeling for the actual physical place, and ending up getting a restricted experience of the local area, which might be relevant if you intend on moving out to the local area. Although you should still have plenty of access to the virtual tours, overviews of the courses and resources, what you would expect from that, and the opportunity to ask questions directly to the students and tutors that are currently there. Once you know how many places you wish to apply for, it will be easier to narrow down the best way for you to apply. Luckily, there aren't too many, so you shouldn't get lost. If you have only one place you wish to apply for, then you should start by looking to see if they accept direct applications, like Northbrook does. Some places, however, may only accept certain kinds of direct applications, such as part-time ones. And some universities may only accept applications through UCAS, like my second option did. UCAS is a website, and it should be what you go through if you're either an international student, if you're applying to multiple universities, up to 5 in this case, or if the university you're looking to apply for only accepts applications through UCAS. It should be noted that you do have to pay a fee to send out applications, and that varies depending on the amount. It would be £20 for a single application and £25 for multiple applications. This changes each year, so make sure you check the prices anytime you wish to apply. Once you will have applied, you'll be asked to go for an interview. What you'll be asked will depend on the university, but in the case of me, a music production student, that consisted of a small portfolio consisting of some music and some images to accompany it and a few basic documents. And all I did was show my work so that they could gauge whether or not I was compatible with the course and what my level was, and just answered a few general questions. Anything that is required of you will be sent out in an email, so don't worry about it too much. Once you will have applied, you should be able to keep track of what it is that you'll need the time come for your meeting. If you apply for a UCAS, you should be able to keep track of any interview dates that are set by each university. So using UCAS, you should still be able to keep track of all 5 applications if you so wish to use up all of your slots. So just make sure you check your emails and that you keep updating your UCAS by refreshing it and checking to see if anything has been sent out to you. Now let's talk about my learning and my experiences at HE in real time now that I've actually joined the course. As you may have heard, university does expect you to be much more self-directed and to come ask for help rather than having people chase you down to offer it. With that being said, you still get plenty of access to tutors and resources within your timetable. This includes one-to-one scheduled tutorials of tutors, in-class lessons, studio time for project work, industry visits, and tech support. Tutors can be gotten in contact with via email, Google Chat, or by finding them around campus when they're just roaming about. That would apply to your studio time for project work, where you'd just be able to grab a tutor and ask them for advice on the spot. So to summarise, you get a set minimum of time in your timetable to access all your tutors and resources, but by being proactive and seeking them out in your own time and blending the two together, you should be able to take full advantage of everything that the university offers. Like I just mentioned, university has a different expectation of its students as it echoes the need for independence. And that would be the first major distinction that I'd make between uni and previous frameworks of education. You're able to delegate your own time and take on what you think would be best for you. The lessons are set in place and it is wise to not let them go to waste, but if you ever had something that you deem more important that day that you'd like to get to, simply communicate it to your tutors and be on your way. The other distinction that I'd make is the freedom and malleability of the course. What I mean by that is that schools and colleges are set in stone, but with universities, they mould and adapt the courses around the students' needs. If students voice their opinion on a certain subject lacking, or the need for a prior course to be revisited, or even one particular student needing a refresher on a certain topic, they can report that and the feedback would be used to optimise the course in real time. It should be noted that there can always be constraints with things like these, such as budgetary constraints or scheduling conflicts. A recent example of this was when enough of our class voiced our opinion, or our desire, I should say, for Ableton lessons to be reintroduced from the first year, and they should now be implemented on the other side of Christmas. Additionally, last year, during my college course, my first year of university, I took the initiative to gather up all the necessary information for a possible introduction of some copies of FL Studio within Northbrook. And this year, we finally got our first one introduced in one of our booths, so that's a nice victory. Now, with assessments, you'll need to get in the habit quickly of becoming proactive. You'll see that that's a theme here. That's the other side of the coin. Being able to operate more freely means needing to be more organised and efficient on your end so that you don't fall through the cracks. With assessments, you won't get chased after to see your progress. You need to take it upon yourself to start early and be on the ball. By getting your mistakes and questions out the way at the start of each assignment, you'll end up with a much better result by the end of it. It can be quite tough, and it is sometimes very common to see everyone struggle with that, but usually after the first assignment, once everyone's handed it in, everyone remembers that they should start the next one early for the best results. Now, why the assignments and taking them seriously matters as much as it does is because the assignments themselves are flexible and can incorporate your own goals and hustles so that you're not just doing something for a course that you won't use later down the road. As long as you're able to explain what it is that you'd like to incorporate in an assessment to your tutor, you can work something out. As for my work, if you were curious about it, I have a link there to my Bandcamp where I posted my last 2 end-of-year assignments, and underneath here I have 2 demo tracks that I'm currently working on for my next assignment. I'll play them briefly just so that you can get an idea, and then we'll move on. So here's my first track. now, here's my second track. That's all you get. Now let's move on to the student union and extracurricular activities and ways to get involved around campus. The student union is a student-run group that gives students opportunities, support and a voice. You can find your student union office by the entrance of the music department, in Northbrook's case, but there's also a website to look into what it offers in more detail. As we are associate members, the website does focus on the 4 campuses of Brighton University, so you're more likely to get an overview of the workings of the student union on their campuses, but not so much specificity with regards to how it relates to Northbrook's own student union, but the basic principles are there. Anyway, there's a few ways to get involved with the student union, the first being a course representative. A course rep is a student that volunteers to represent their class and act as a messenger to pass along any feedback during termly meetings with the university. It's using course reps that we were able to push our request for the introduction of FL Studio copies, for example. Secondly, you can either join or form a society. All you need for that is to have 2 or more people and present your idea to the student union, and then you try to work it out. A more detailed description of the process can be found on the Brighton Student Union website, and you can even look there to check the kinds of societies that are already in place and get some ideas. Lastly, I'll cover campus activities. Campus activities, like most things, are limited in our current situation, but they are still available. There are a few bulletin boards around campus where you might find certain societies being advertised, such as movie nights, and even some one-off reoccurring events. There's also an online student portal detailing some of the enrichment activities that you have available, such as yoga and meditation, and even Kung Fu. There are the student theatre and the student bar, which would usually be a hub of activity, including shows to attend and a space to socialise in. And normally we would have Metfest, a series of end-of-year shows, gigs and exhibitions from all creative courses at degree and diploma levels, taking place at our Worthing and Brighton campuses, as well as some external venues. Support for higher education. As an HE student, you have a wide range of support available to you. We'll start off with the financial support. In addition to getting a loan to pay for the tuition fees, you're able to apply for a maintenance loan from Student Finance as well. This is also a repayable loan that you would receive in increments each term to help you with any essentials, whether that be accommodation, food, or travel expenses. The amount will be determined by your situation, which you would describe when undergoing the process. Bursaries are also available to students and can appear under the guise of a progression bursary, a travel bursary, or low household income bursaries, among a couple others. Mental health support is also accessed through our pastoral mentors. You can get into contact with them by finding them on site or by contacting them via email or phone. You may also just find them roaming the halls. They're very inviting, so if you ever have any concerns, you can go to them. These are the people you should be going to see if you need help with any issues, whether the causes of your issues and stresses are internal or external, meaning whether it's from stress due to your course and the workload, or if there are any issues happening at home or outside of university. As for learning support, there's a few things you need to know about. There's the additional support known as the Disabled Student Allowance that is available for anyone with any impairments. They'll address any of your concerns about studying with reduced mobility, visual or auditory impairments, needing a note taker, or even there to help with dyslexia. From a more broad perspective, you have access to the Learning Resource Centres, or LRCs for short, where you have access to libraries, computers, and study rooms. In these LRCs is where you'll be able to book workshops, either on a one-to-one basis or as a group, to help you learn or understand how to use specific software that you might find on the computers, like Photoshop, or just to make sure you know how to access both the digital and printed resources that you have available to you as a student. The LRC also supplies drop-in sessions to get support for basic computing skills, organisational skills, and again, dyslexia, to name a few. The buddy scheme is where we pair new students with currently enrolled students so that they can seek any advice or help from them. That could be coursework related, student life related, but also for something more personal, so you wanted help finding the pastoral mentors to discuss something with them. Additionally, you have the tutors that are also accessible and open to discussion outside of your course hours, again for course related reasons or to help refer you to what you need. In this instance, it's more about who you would feel more comfortable sharing with. So at uni you are expected to be more independent and proactive, but that doesn't mean that you should know how to do so right away or that you have to do it alone. Transitioning into independent living. Now, if you were to move away from home, it could feel like stepping into a whole new world, and depending on your case, it very well might be. Now, if you were to pair that with having to start your studies in a new framework, such as university, you may realise that it starts to add up, and it could end up being quite overwhelming for some. I don't mean to say that to discourage anyone that isn't a seasoned veteran of living abroad or managing their money from taking that leap, especially given that you learn best in the deep end sometimes, and you've got to start somewhere. I just want to make sure that you don't get in your own ways during your studies, that you can get the most out of it, and that you keep your mental health as a top priority. Although that's precisely why we have pastoral mentors and the support that we do here at Northbrook. So make sure to address any concerns by talking to them. You can find some information online, or if you're currently enrolled on a college degree course and you've never gone to talk to them, now's the perfect time. So my advice is, if you can go another year without having to pay rent and being able to use all that free time to find out what works for you academically and finding your groove so that you can tackle the following years more efficiently, then why not? That's what I did. I waited until my second year so that I had more time to think through the process and prepare. I also then got to move in with two people that I was friends with, which made the situation a whole lot less stressful and more enjoyable, knowing that I had people that I could count on for my following academic year. Now, when it comes to sharing a house with new people, the most important rule to remember is communication. If you're unhappy with something, the best thing to do is just to talk to your housemates. A lot of people will be moving out for the first time, so they may not be used to the responsibilities that come with it. So as long as you're aware of that and everyone's background, you should be able to move and maneuver this properly. I, for one, am definitely more of a neat freak, and I constantly need to check myself to find out if I'm just being super picky, oftentimes I am, or if it is something that needs addressing and that's out of line. The simplest piece of advice I can give for that is to just get everybody together and set up a rota so that everyone can play their part in cleaning up, taking out the bins and buying communal items, just making sure that all the communal stuff is taken care of and appropriately delegated to all the housemates. Now, talking about the financial side of things, some people have had to drop out because they mismanage their finances, and that's the sad reality of it. So it should be one of your main priorities, even if it can feel tedious at times. Taking the time to calculate travel costs from multiple starting locations, or using certain types of tickets and passes, and even considering using different methods of travel, like using a bus instead of a train, or walking halfway to your station, or even investing in a bike, is all worthwhile and recommended. I'd advise you to set up 2 accounts so that you can have money for your essentials such as rent and travel put aside, just to make sure you don't accidentally pull from that pool of money that you can't afford not to have down the line. Some personal or mobile banking apps allow you to set money aside in vaults and will get overviews of your spending habits, which can help you make choices further along down the line. So make sure you browse through all the options, and there'll be plenty of articles online, as with most of the things I'll be talking about here. So make sure you take the time outside of this and do some investigating. Another tip is picking up on some cooking skills. In my opinion, that might be one of the surest ways to avoid running out of money too quickly. And it will also keep you healthy, which will benefit you and your work and your health. I, for one, got HelloFresh at discounted price, and I saved my recipe cards. And from there on out, I started to use them as references, even if I stopped ordering from them once my discounts run out, because I am cheap and a student after all. And through that process, I picked up on some cooking skills and got to find some more joy through the process. So make sure you look for student discounts as well. That's how I got mine. And most purchases might benefit from a student discount. So there's plenty of resources available for you in that domain. And finally, another piece of advice that I'd like to give is setting up a student current account for an arranged overdraft, just to make sure you have a safety net, as well as receiving some benefits depending on the bank. What's next? Well, as for my plans post-graduation, I'd be lying if I said I had any. Although I shouldn't expect to, as I'm only halfway through my 3-year course. I don't have a clear path quite yet, but that's kind of the reason why I'm here in the first place. I'm taking this time to hone in on my skills and explore the avenues available to me as a music student until I get closer to finding out what it is that I want to pursue in a more focused sense. Overall, I'm gaining experience with recording, live sound, mixing and mastering, theory and production, and other things. Just trying to gain as many marketable skills for life after university. From there, I'll be able to pursue whatever it is that I set my heart on. And if I were to have a lot of changes of heart, then hopefully I should be able to undertake whatever else it is that I choose to pursue. As for my university highlights, the first thing that I would talk about would be the facilities and the freedoms that they bring. Whether that's the freedom to mess around with equipment I could have never gotten my hands on outside of university, the freedom to put my learning into practice with these high-end studios, and the freedom to be myself without getting in anyone's way. And what I mean by that is one of the reasons I picked Northbrook at first was because of the amount of booths and studios and classrooms that they had available that I could use without feeling like I was going to get in anyone's way, anyone more talented and deserving of the equipment, if you will. By having all the equipment we have, I can rent something out, or book something out I should say, use my time in there, and everyone else still has time to do their own thing and make the most of the facilities. Although at this point, I've become much more comfortable being around, and I've gotten to know the techs and other students a lot more, which brings me to the next point, the next highlight, which would be the people and the environment. You develop stronger bonds and friendships with people you have mutual interests with that you can relate to. So by being in that kind of environment, you can be yourself a bit more freely and explore that part of yourself much more extensively. You'll learn to teach people around you. You'll learn from the people around you, picking up on things subconsciously. You'll become more comfortable in your own skin and with your skills. And you'll be in a position to better yourself and your knowledge around the clock, not just confined to what your timetable has. It's freeing and super beneficial to find like-minded individuals. So I'd recommend you do that, even if it is outside of university and you do so through online communities or meeting people by going to events and so forth. That concludes my presentation. I hope you found this information useful and I hope you make the most of the rest of your day. Thanks for watching.